Greg, thank you so much. We're going to get the next fireside coming up here. All right, thank you. All right, let's bring up Jyoti Balani back up here as our fireside chat host, and Alex Dunn, who is the Chief Product Officer at Voicify. One thing I love about Voicify is it's a verb, and it's a company. Very cool. Well, have a great fireside chat. Thank you both. Let's give it up for Jyoti and Alex one more time. Come on.
Ow! Yeah, go us.
Go us, right. All right. Okay, so Alex, you and I were chatting yesterday.
Yeah.
Just for the audience, and hopefully everybody's been through the booth, can you ground set everybody on what problem Voicify, am I saying that correctly?
Voicify, yeah.
Voicify is solving. What did you dream up when you started?
Yeah, so from our perspective on the product side, what we're trying to do is make it easy to create that end-to-end enterprise-grade voice assistant. What we sort of saw in the market was a lot of focus in each one of the specific tools that goes into building a voice assistant. People building wake word models, people doing speech recognition, people doing natural language understanding, people doing content management, decision engineering, and people making that deployable everywhere. And the customers that we initially started working with really had a hard time kind of like encapsulating and finding the right way to incorporate all these things together. So we wanted to sort of bring it under one roof where we provide the tools to be end-to-end to build those assistants out and continue to monitor them, continue to scale them, grow the use cases, develop more intelligent models, and sort of take it to that next level wherever you want that assistant to be.
Right. Yeah, the multimodal, right, omnichannel, because once the users, they're exposed to this kind of technology, they expect a lot more than they did from mobile and web.
Right.
How do you approach, when enterprises and verticals, you can talk about whichever vertical you guys are seeing high adoption in, they've gone through the, evolution cycle, web, mobile, cloud. How do you guys come in and sort yourself? Is it an overlay, architecturally? How do you help them out?
Well, the first thing we do is we look at the business problems that they're having. Everything needs to be driven by a business problem. Otherwise, it won't last. The other thing we look at is essentially what is working and what can be made faster, more actionable, and easier for the user. And then we take those existing channels, whether it be like, hey, we are pushing our users to our mobile app. We have so much content, we have so many features there, but it's hard for them to sort of navigate those things, find the content in the right place, and then that's really a starting point. And then we can help them build the assistant, make it sort of ambient within that, so not to consume their focus and be like, now you've got a chat interface and now you're talking to a chat bot instead of using your app. It's really in the background and executing tasks and extracting information for you, helping you navigate to find the right thing, which creates some really interesting experiences specifically within mobile, which is you're kind of educating the user on what else is available that they otherwise might have a hard time discovering in the UI when you get into these really complex situations. So the way we sit is really sort of on top and really trying to make use of the existing work that's been done, the existing content, the existing features, and just making them more accessible, faster, easier to use with voice.
Now, as a product leader, and I've also been one in my previous corporate life, how do you navigate the roadmap features and not become slave to just one client?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think we're lucky at this point now is we have clients that span and customers that span a number of different industries and many different use cases. So we're able to even do simple things like interview them and understand what's working, what's not, where they're trying to go. But again, like grounding that and rooting that in the business problem. So even if we help solve one problem, there's still more where there may be voice as part of that solution. And so we then take that, we analyze it against like our quantitative data. What are people actually saying to these assistants that's working? What are they saying that's not? Where are they falling off? Why are they falling off? And then doing the same thing for what our customers are actually doing in our platform. So what is working, what is not? How have they been finding our features? We combine that sort of qualitative and quantitative data to inform essentially what should come next. And then we mix that with what I think is our little bit of magic, which is innovating, taking those business problems, but reaching beyond what we are ready to do and to start to look at those next phases.
Do you advise clients on what they should not be using this tech for?
Yes. I still think we need to do that a little bit more. I'm sure some of you here might also have this sort of experience. When you're working with newer technology, although voice has been around for a while, the applications of it are still relatively new compared to things like web and mobile. people will jump on the novelty. They'll say, oh, this would be a neat experience, this would be a neat use case, and then they'll put all their effort into it, they'll ship it, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months later, they're like, oh, no one's using it. This isn't creating revenue for us, or this isn't saving us costs, or this isn't solving a problem, and then it falls off. So a big focus that we have is it's always got to be rooted in something that's giving you a return, saving a cost, or just solving a user's problem that can somewhat be quantified. Anything that's not, we try to typically steer people away. But people also just want to try new things, and they want to build stuff, and they want to see and feel that novelty for certain use cases, and that's fine, but we always want to make sure that there's a way back.
Yeah, I think we're past the hype cycle. I think we've been acknowledging that.
Yeah.
But there comes this maturity of thinking through, enterprise-grade experiences. So from a security, privacy standpoint, how are you addressing that? Because some industries are very stringent about that.
Yeah, so we work in the financial industry, we work in automotive, where security is extremely strict and an extreme challenge. So we're a SaaS platform. It introduces some more challenges too, because it's not just take our code, run it on your own stuff, and now you're the ones that are assuming all the risk. We have to go through and get SOC 2 compliance and ISO 27001. But all of that aside, at our core, on the product and engineering team, we have security as one of our core competencies. It's everything should be private and transparent, and I think that's important not just for building a platform that's enterprise grade, but it's important for the end user and the end consumer to understand what's being used, how their data is being used and stored, and who's accessing it. More tactically, we also do things like shim out PII before we store anything, right? So although we're storing the conversations that people are having, anything that would be personally identifiable is tossed. Now, if you're a brand that wants to own that data and you do want it, like you're a bank and you need to see what people are saying, we can send that to you and you can be responsible for it, which is a big sort of, I think a well-balanced trade-off of we can still show you what was happening kind of functionally in the experience without keeping the audio recordings from your users. But if you need it, you can get it. We'll make that extremely easy, but it's kind of on you.
What about the ethical considerations? Do you come across them? Because I say just because you can doesn't mean you should,
right.
Especially in the automotive space. How are you guys guiding? Is there any principles that you're sharing with your clients as they think about it?
In general, the principles for building something is it should solve someone's problem. And if it's not solving someone's problem, then it should be looked at with a little bit more scrutiny. Everything should be scrutinized, of course, but generally speaking, there's sort of two sides to the ethical challenge. One is what's the use case? Are you creating issues for people? And we have ways of sort of really analyzing that and giving you the tools to kind of change that and control it. The other side is how do we make sure that bias isn't introduced too much, right? Anyone doing machine learning, it's impossible to have 100% bias-free machine learning models. No matter what, your data is aggregated from a certain number of places. You should diversify that as much as possible, especially in the space of speech recognition. But it's more of educating our customers that exists, and here's how you should be going about the best practices to get as much data from as many different perspectives that you can use to create the most intelligent, but at least the least biased that you can be from a machine learning model.
Yeah, because it's certainly the AI hall of shame. I always tell clients, you definitely want to be staying out of that one.
Yeah.
What about analytics? How deep are you going and helping clients analyze the data that's being generated?
Yeah, well, the beautiful thing that we have as sort of a benefit with our analytics is we know what you're trying to have your assistant do. We know what your assistant should be understanding. We know what happy paths you want your users to be taking, and we know which ones you don't want them to be taking too. So when we're analyzing the conversations, it's not just a data dump of here's what everyone said, which of course you can aggregate that data and get it as well, but it's contextualized to the assistant. If a user, for example, opens up, it says your wake word, talks to your assistant, here's the initial response from it, and then never uses it again, that's very important to look at and understand exactly what happened, what they said, what the assistant said, so you can go make changes and try to adapt that, A/B test it with different changes, and then go publish those changes once you see it be more successful. So we basically break down our analytics from the aggregate view, things like how many interactions, new user acquisition, all that good stuff, across all the channels, filtered by language, all those aggregate level analytics you'd expect. But then we go right into the detail and showing you the real paths that people were taking and surface that up with suggestions to say, for example, hey, people are falling off here. Here's some things that we see commonly that you should basically take a look at. Let's adjust the language of what you're saying. Or maybe they're saying something and they're hitting, sort of fallback path. Let's go look at what they're saying. Was it something that was, should be a feature and you're missing? Well, now you've started to develop a user-driven roadmap for what your assistant should do. Or is it totally out of bounds? It means your user's not educated enough on what the assistant should be doing too. And those are the types of, not just data, but the inference that we're trying to be able to bring to light.
Yeah, because I think that's where the gold mine is, right? Generating the data, because I don't think we've had access to that and what the user actually wants. They're saying it in their own words. What about the rigor of testing? Quality assurance. That's one of the areas we're finding most challenging because it's no longer just testing happy paths, right? So how are you guys addressing that?
So we try to instill a best practice. One, we have a bunch of testing tools, which is, at least makes it easier to say, like, here's all the things you can do to test. You can write automated tests, you can use simulations, you can, run scripts, and you can do end user testing. You can share links to say, like, hey, go run a user test with this link. You'll get the analytics for that, like, in one place. Tooling aside, it's more about educating people that you have to do it. Because a lot of people will go and they'll build a happy path. They won't build any of the edges out. And then they'll go test their exact happy path. I'm like, of course it's gonna work. What are you testing? Like I say, hey, Shoppy, our little shopping assistant, help me find sweatpants. Like, cool, yeah, we know that works because you wrote if someone is asking about sweatpants and we extract the sweatpants entity to say here are sweatpants. But it's more important to instill the practice of test as you go, do end testing, test before you publish content, and then continuously test and analyze what real users are doing. One of the I think, interesting challenges we have in voice is we'll never know everything a user is going to do, right? And I know you and I were talking about this yesterday, but you can't predict everything someone's going to do. It's not like building a website or a mobile app where if they click a link and it 404s, that's on you as the builder, and it's very obvious, and the user feels like that's on you.
Yeah.
If I say something to this voice assistant and it gives me a response that I didn't expect, it feels like it's on me that I said something wrong to it. And there's so many of those different edge cases to cover that it's very important to be just continuously testing the micro components, to be testing the individual conversations, and to be able to test the aggregate. And then, in a way, you got to test in production with some of this stuff and see how it really goes.
Yeah, I think the traditional path of unit testing, system integrated testing, and then UAT, right, user acceptance testing. What we typically find is, it's like, where are we going to find everybody to test? There's languages, there's accents, there's so many nuances and dimensions, and you can't put it on the business users to replicate that. So that's one of, I think it's an industry-wide challenge.
Yeah.
There are companies like Applause, for example, they try to get humans to test it, but that too doesn't go far enough.
Right.
So I feel like we need to innovate in that area.
Something's got to happen here where we can really do user testing at scale.
Yeah, because I think without that, where do you get the confidence of deploying this? Because if you could get really wrong, your brand could really be at risk, right?
Oh yeah,
damage from
absolutely.
that. So out of, excuse me, all the projects, what's your favorite project?
Favorite project? Oh man. Well, I mean, I have a fun project that is actually not a customer project that I'm building right now, which is we're taking basically a bunch of podcasts. I'm taking, specifically my favorite podcast is NPR's How I Built This. They interview entrepreneurs. So we're taking all of those podcasts, transcribing them with our speech recognition, and then taking all of that context and surfacing it up in real time. So I could be listening to an episode, for example, the Lululemon one. I just was listening to it last week, and be able to just ask a question about something that happened that they were talking about in the episode. Like, what was that what was that name of that person that they mentioned? Or like, what was the year? What was their original price point? Like things that otherwise you're scrubbing back and trying to find, and then you're like, oh, okay. Or you're going to look up elsewhere, to be able to just sort of get the info like immediately. Not at the touch of your finger, but at the opening of your mouth, to be able to just say what you want. And to start at that high level view, a big thing that we look at in our tooling to be able to support is going from this massive data set of content. How do you then narrow down into a subset, and now that's context, and then how do we look at the finer piece of data that's relevant? So that's my new pet project. That's my current one. that's I'm a big fan of, and it's going pretty well so far. I'll have demos out. Eventually, I'll send everyone out. I'll post links and stuff. You can go try it yourself.
That'd be great, because I think you embody the art of the possible, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a phrase, Pete, we're hearing over and over again. Alex, thank you so much. We're looking forward to keeping an eye on where Voicify goes, and keep us posted on your favorite project.
Right on, yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Alex and Jyoti. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.